Once, long ago, in the deep blue below.
Don't be silly, grandmother. Everybody knows there's no such thing as mermaids.
This review honestly wrote itself. I didn't even realize that I was writing it in my head until I got to the end of the movie and screamed into my pillow because it was so bad. But I have since ranted onto the pages of Pages.doc, and we are going to dive into my thoughts on the Little Mermaid 2018 version. And oh boy, do I have thoughts. Process begin. Before we get into the review portion of this video, I would like to address the 800-pound gorilla that some people in the comments are definitely going to chuck at me. I am aware that this movie was meant for children, okay? I get it. Oh boy, am I aware that it was meant for children. But just because a movie is meant for children doesn't mean that you get to schlub off when making it at all. And that goes for the acting, the scripting, and the everything elsing. This truly and honestly could have been something magical and special for its audience, but instead it was like something you madly scrambled to grab from the bottom of your dresser the day of a 1-year-old's birthday party and deal with because, at least it's something and you're not showing up dressed in nothing to an infant's birthday party. So there's that. So let's start off with a list of pros so that absolutely none of you think that I am a completely aggressive cinema snob with nothing better to do than to stick my nose up at content that's absolutely not to my exact specifications. I'm not completely heartless, you know. The costuming and the scene design were decent, I'll say that, and the soundtrack was adequate, I will say that. And when I say costuming, I mean that sans the mermaid tail, but we'll get to that. But with regards to the costuming, you can tell that most of the $5 million budget went into the period-accurate clothing design and into the construction of the scenes where it counted, which I can appreciate. I will say that. But no one cares about the nice, happy, joy Weebo who makes friends with all and approaches things like a well-adjusted person. Heckin' no. So let's do this. The Little Mermaid 2018 is very much an attempted knockoff that picks up where the original animated 1989 Little Mermaid movie left off after the second act. And we know that because of the opening narration scene in which we're given the rundown of the plot of the first movie up until just about the second act, where Ariel gives up her voice for the chance to win the heart of the prince that she saved in the earlier scene. Only in this version, the mermaid gives up her soul and doesn't end up getting the guy. Shocker. Otherwise, this movie would have been done before we hit the second batch of narration, where an old lady comes in, Princess Bride style, to educate her grandchildren on the silly notion of seeing and believing and what have you. And we get little story breaks like this with the grandmother and her grandchildren throughout the movie. The story breaks actually cripple the story's pacing throughout the entire movie. Shocking, I know. Who would have thunk that story breaks would cripple pacing of all things? But it really didn't need to happen. Except that it did, because that's how you get a big reveal later in the story. The main character of this Little Mermaid film is not in fact Ariel, because that would be copyright infringement, and this is not a remake of the animated Disney film, despite what the marketing would have you believe, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, our pivotal character is not even the mermaid that we see in the movie, Elizabeth. It's not even the fake Little Mermaid who has a perpetual case of the legs. Rather unfortunate for someone who is supposed to be the Little Mermaid. At least up until the last couple of minutes of the film, but we'll get to that, no spoilers. In fact, the main character of our movie, The Little Mermaid 2018, is a grown-ass adult human, male, named Cam. Yep, Cam is 2 parts creepy, 2 parts noisy, and they're really just one and the same, to be quite frank. Journalist who takes his niece on a cross-country trip to Mississippi to discover if mermaids actually exist, and also to find magical healing water for his niece, Ellie, who has a mysterious and detrimental illness where the worst thing that ever actually happens to her is that she gets a very bad cough, completely cured by spoonfuls of, who the fuck knows what. This little girl is so bubbly when she's not dying. I swear to God, they're forcing the sweet tooth innocent narrative on us so hard that I'm about to forcibly give myself a root canal the entirety of the movie. But that's only exactly half of Ellie's character. The other half of what makes her character how her character is how special she is. How is she special, you might be asking? Well, she has the heart of a mermaid.
There's a powerful magic in you. A spirit of the ocean.
What does that mean? Fuck if I know. We never actually get an explanation for what exactly the heart of a mermaid is supposed to do, only that it is something that can unequivocally defeat all of the world's evils. For example, a circus wizard or a bad cough. Can you imagine pitching that to a producer? Can you? Can you? But my friends, it's not just the crappy writing that gets me and my delicate sensibilities in a tizzy. Oh no. Although that is a lot of it. It is the shitty actor. Allow me to introduce you to our villain character, Locke, the circus ringmaster wizard figure who managed to con a mermaid out of her soul for his master plan that was conning a small southern Mississippi town out of their hard-earned finances to sell them miracle mermaid piss water from a tank as a cure-all for headaches or undisclosed leg issues. Locke, you are a literal wizard and apparently the most powerful one in the world, and you're peddling snake oil. Okay then. This guy, character, actor, what have you, is such the part of a stale mustachioed evil villain. Generic doesn't even begin to cut it. At least with regular Disney villains, we get decent and compelling, although admittedly childish, over-the-top evil persons. Locke was just bad. Truly, awfully bad. I hate Locke. Not just because he's a villain, but because he's a crappy villain, and he's acted like he's a fucking plank. And then we get our honorable mentions. Not villain characters, per se. Rather, they are supporting cast members given next to no purpose. Not even a really supportive one. And even less screen time. You think I'm exaggerating? I'm absolutely not. There's Thora, one of two circus friends of our mermaid figure, Elizabeth, that the writers couldn't decide between making a witch or making a fortune teller or mashing them both together. But what they did decide was that this character needed to be the living incarnation of Deus Ex Machina, except for during the crucial moments of the third act when her time-stopping abilities, mermaid tail transfigurations, and other such magic shenanigans utterly fail because we need more tension in the last act. And then we have Ulysses, the wolf man who's so completely pointless to the plot that I had to look up his name in the IMDb database to actually figure out his name was Ulysses, because we didn't get it during the movie at all. I don't remember this. No, but he's a wolf man, and I'm not kidding when I say that there's no point to him. He doesn't do hardly anything for the plot. He's just there.
Like a bird in the wind.
But that's not every supporting cast member. No, it's not. Those were just the ones that we're supposed to care about a little bit more than the other ones, without actually caring about them in any shape or way. However, we should talk about the characters that I actually did like in the movie, and I'd actually rather see a movie about. Peggy, Jean, and Lorraine, who are undoubtedly more interesting and compelling than all of the other main casts, mainly because they actually have personalities and introduce you to the plot narrative surrounding the snake oil water curse thing, which, to be honest, would have been a really interesting idea to explore further, but it's only given all of 5 minutes before it's back to the senseless storyline. And then, of course, there's our mermaid, Elizabeth, the mermaid who can walk on land, who's prisoner to Locke due to him having her soul, but who can yet still take long walks in the woods and go on nighttime swims with prospective blonde naughty tango buddies, who is looking desperately for love and presumably falling in love with our main character Cam, but inevitably swims off into the sunset and at the end of the movie, never to be seen or heard from again. Who's a mermaid traveling through the water on a boat. It's a hot mess. Okay. It's just a hot mess. And I feel obligated to mention it because of course we can't have a Disney knockoff movie without at least one obligatory song that establishes the plot and the motivations surrounding a character that we already learned about in the beginning of the movie from the pre-narration, narration, animation throwback. This song scene would have been a cool scene, save for the fact that it feels so completely out of place and foreign, and let me explain why. Because most everything coming out of the mouths of the characters that you've heard or seen in this movie is entire diegetic to the action of the film, discounting the opening narration but including this song. Now, what does diegetic mean? Well, I'll tell you. Diegetic sound is a sound whose source is visible on the screen or whose source is implied to be present by the action of the film. The voices of characters and sounds made by things in the story or source music from entrapments in the film, what have you. Something not diegetic would be mood music or narration. Musical numbers themselves fall into a sort of gray area between diegetic and non-diegetic, because in musical numbers they can be diegetic as much as they can be non-diegetic, but Here's the problem. This isn't a musical. Like I said, most everything is diegetic and there's only one music number, which is explicitly diegetic in the story, according to the way that the cinematography gives things away.
Round in circles, pointless wandering, and the crowd lines up again.
It is literally a part of the plot, and not just simply a vehicle for which to exposit all over the place. And if it was intended to be non-diegetic, then they didn't get that across very well. Do you know anyone in real life that doesn't, ironically, casually just break into sad expositions, song and dance numbers while they're by themselves as a cry for help? I didn't think so. That's what this is, and that's why it's so jarring, because it's out of place and it's completely disjointed. Well, there's the fact that it's disjointed, and also the fact that Cam is subtly creeping the whole time on Elizabeth while she's doing her sad song number. And then there's her tale. The mermaid's tale. You know, something that would be theoretically important to get across and get right. $5 million on this crappy piece of cinematography, and you can't even come back with one decent tale for an hour and 25 minutes of runtime. H2O, the Australian mermaid TV show, had 39 hours of runtime and a little less than $7 million in budget. And those tales did not look like you'd vacuum sealed a pair of legs together. No, they didn't. Anyway, this entire movie winds down to one single message from our mermaid person, and it's an important one. Get it in your head. Whenever Ellie can't breathe because of her mysterious illness, all she gotta do is swim in the ocean and she'll be just fine. It's okay though, because remember when I told you that Ellie had the heart of a mermaid? Well, that, my friends, is because Ellie's actually the grandmother narrating the story the whole time. You see, the grandmother narration breaks were absolutely relevant and worth the jarring pacing of the plot. Which is funny because Elizabeth was a mermaid and she couldn't stop Locke for shit during the climactic fight scene, except that Ellie's a mermaid and she did make all the difference in the climactic fight scene. Where's the logic? Is it because she's a human with the heart of a mermaid who's actually just a mermaid? Who knows? Yes, it's stupid. And there's honestly so much more I could go in to say about this god-awful movie, but this is actually near 2,000 words already, so we need to stop before it turns into another Titans review.